After-action devotion filed under Litany of Preparation, subsegment, Console Sanctification. A single drop of oil falls from somewhere above the command cradle and lands upon my console with the precision of a benediction. Under the dim crimson lumens, it becomes a red sun in miniature, a universe the size of a fingernail, its surface trembling with the breath of the ventilation stacks. The impact is small enough that no one else hears it, but to me it is a bell. I watch it flatten, then swell, then flatten again, as if the machine's pulse were moving through it. I should wipe it away at once. Regulation says the interfaces must be clear before invocation, yet for a heartbeat, and only one, I let it shine. The glow of lumen red runs through it like fresh blood, like lacquer upon a reliquary. It reflects my face back at me, distorted into a mask of glassy reverence. Then I perform the proper motion with the sanctified cloth. Clockwise 3 turns for blessing, counterclockwise 1 for binding. The drop vanishes into the weave and leaves behind a faint scent of hot metal and cardamom oil from the priest's unguent. I enter the acknowledgement rune with my left hand, because the right is for vows, and speak the first line that every initiate knows. Machine spirit, awaken. The command deck breathes with me. Sensor chains sway from arched struts, coughing out a sweet smoke that cannot quite hide the sting of ozone. Servitors kneel in their sockets like penitent saints wired into reliquaries. Their mouths shape binary canticles in tones that move between waterfall and hive wind. The floor is pocked with old scars, impact marks from a century of hard maneuvers. And the worn places shine with an oil-dark polish where boots have learned the same path over generations. My fingers travel those paths now. Check, confirm, prime, seal. Each haptic rune is a prayer bead. Each prayer bead responds with a glimmer that means ready. Reactor, I say. Receive breath. From the lower levels, a sigh like bellows waking from a long winter. Heat pushes through the grates in measured pulses, timed to the surgeon-exact rhythm of pumps, older than the city below us. The whole deck seems to lean a fraction toward the heart, the way the faithful lean toward their altar. I keep my gaze forward. To look back at the princeps is to invite judgment before the rite has even begun. It was simpler when I first came here. The rote felt like faith because someone I trusted told me it was. Now the rote is a scaffolding I climb, so I will not drown in what waits at the top. Primary conduits, sanctify, calls Moderati Larak from her station. Voice flat, perfect, the sound of a razor placed gently in a velvet case. Sanctified, I answer, and lay 2 fingers to the braided cable at my left shoulder. The insulation is warm. Beneath it runs a power that has outlived worlds. It hums with the same pitch as the prayer bell that wakes us at 4 a.m. Light shifts across the deck as the lumen strata adjust. The arches above us take on the color of coals under ash, a smoldering that suggests dawn in a world that has not seen dawn since the reactors were first lit. In the haze, I can just make out the icons. Cogs wreathed in laurels, aquilae with eyes cut to admit the glare of logic. The incense collects on them in sticky tears. I mark that for the attendance schedule. The shrine needs to weep, yes, but not to clot. Helm display absolved, I say, and the viewplate slits curtain open in a narrow band. Beyond them, the dock's cavern yawns like a cathedral nave. Crane gantries hang from chains, hulks of steel shaped almost into saints by the darkness. Far down, figures in red robes move with insect grace among vat lights that bloom and fade, bloom and fade. There is no sun here, only maintenance cycles, but the body still invents mourning. The servitors raise their heads as one, as if a single thought has pulled their leashes taut. Their mouths ratchet wider. The chant changes meter. I feel it in my teeth. It is the cadence they use for ignition sequences and for executions. The difference is only one stanza and which door opens afterward. "Moderati fen," comes the princeps voice from behind me, a dry wire rasp routed through brass. "Report readiness by right." "By right," I answer. "Locomotion arrays aligned, void shielding, dormant, standing to, right arm batteries, cold, left arm manipulation, locked and bled, sensorium, mute, petitioning allotment." Each phrase clicks into the next with the satisfaction of a bolt finding its thread. He does not reply. He is already halfway elsewhere, shoulder deep in the communion socket, letting the first hairline fibers find the ports in his skull. When he is gone, only the machine will be left wearing the memory of him. We all know this. We all pretend it is victory. I take the cloth out again and polish the place where the oil had been. This time I see it. The smear draws itself upward. It is subtle, a motion I could have dreamed, the faintest creep of shine against gravity, a narrow, glassy tongue reaching up the console's incline in defiance of weight and law. For an instant it seems to hesitate, like an eye shifting to find mine. The breath I left halfway in my throat burns, all the way down. "Deck 32 through 36, lock your safeties," Larek says. "Repeat, lock, confirm." Runes chime acceptance along the curve of my console. The smear ceases its climb, or appears to, as if embarrassed at being caught. When I touch it, there is nothing there but the clean grit of pearled enamel and the heat of the panel's skin. "Moderati." Larak again, a fraction softer. "Confirming," I say, and my hand is steady because my hand has practiced steadiness more than it has practiced sleep. I wipe the seam with a third clockwise turn I do not owe to the rites, then make a small private mark in the daybook margin. Anomalous capillary behavior, prelink, unobserved by others. The book is mine, but the book will outlive me. One day, some other hand will inherit its stains and my little lies. Censer smoke thickens. The first tones of the synchronization carol rise from the lower decks, 3 notes held until the metal sings them back. The conduits around my chair flex, a lover's hand about to close. Fear wakes in me without shame. We call it awe so we can keep our names. I tuck the cloth away. I square the votive on the edge of my console. It is a wafer of brass stamped with the cog and the double-headed bird, smooth from being thumbed. When I was a child, the priest told us the Emperor watches as we rust. I believed he meant the enemies first. Later, I learned he meant everyone. "Machine spirit," I say, head bowed. "Receive my thought as service. Take what you need of me and no more." The princeps' command words arrive through the vox and through the air at once, like thunder heard and seen. "Commence joining." Cables tighten. The cold touch at the base of my skull warms, then heats, then blooms into a halo of needles kissing bone. Somebody's bell rings. Somebody else laughs under their breath and calls it a cough. The deck plates hum with a note too low to be music. Above me, the arches seem to stoop, as if the whole room were bending to hear a secret passed along the length of its spine. I fix my eyes on the place where the drop had been, now dull, ordinary, correct. I tell myself it did not move. I tell myself the laws are still the laws. I tell myself the only thing that watches me is duty. The needles go in. The light goes redder. The world begins to speak in a voice made of iron and memory. And as I fall into it, I cannot help wondering. If the oil was a sun, whose sky was it rising in? After-action devotion, logged under communion rites, segment 12 of the Collegia Titanica Manual, recorded not as memory, but as confession. We begin, as always, with silence too thick for speech, the kind that belongs to cathedrals, or tombs. Censer smoke hangs above the bridge in gray-gold ropes, coiling around the lumen lamps like incense clinging to a halo. Every surface gleams with ritual polish. Every rune glows the color of old blood. Tech priests move between consoles, their robes whispering like paper in flame. They speak in alternating bursts of code and prayer, Binharic invocations that sound to the uninitiated like static blessed into meaning. I mouth the responses automatically. It is easier that way. Power relays at 80%. Praise the Omnissiah. Each call and response folds into the next until the chamber itself seems to chant. Even the machines answer, relays clicking in time like metal rosaries. We are not soldiers preparing for war. We are clergy preparing for communion. Vylin, the Princeps Majoris, rests in his throne of iron nerves. Tubes pierce his chest like ribs turned inward. The neural lattice hums in sympathy with his pulse. He does not move. He does not have to. The machine hears his breathing and interprets it as command. Moderati, confirm alignment, he intones, and three of us speak as one. Cogitators awake. Gyro locks sanctified. Reactor breath steady. There is comfort in that. Procedure as penance. I glance at the status slates before me. Columns of sacred numbers drift down like falling scripture. I touch the rune for acknowledgement. It responds with warmth, a pulse beneath my fingertips. I whisper, I hear you, though no one else does. I have served long enough to understand the chain of being. The Princeps speaks with the clarity of command, his mind amplified by the manifold throne. We, the Moderati, serve as extensions of his sight and touch. Beneath us, the servitors form the body's reflex. And at the deepest level, below deck, below reason, the machine spirit dreams. It is not a single voice, but a chorus of centuries, layered and indistinct, like the sea under iron. We call it divine because to call it something else would invite madness. Valen once told me that the Titan is a cathedral built to house a god that does not sleep. I believed him then. Now I believe the opposite. The Titan sleeps, and we are the dreams that keep it from forgetting what it once was. They tell us the neural link is a blessing, the touch of divinity made flesh. But every blessing hides a cost. I check my cranial ports, brushing away dust and anointing them with conductive oil. My reflection stares back from the polished panel, eyes ringed with fatigue, the faint scar at my temple from last cycle's misalignment. I am ready, I lie. No one ever is. The first seconds after synchronization are agony, pain distilled into light. Then comes the silence, the perfect stillness that feels like drowning in clarity. Somewhere in that silence, my own thoughts will dissolve. That is what they call unity. My hands hesitate on the final seal. I remember the old stories, crew who merged too deeply and never came back, their minds fossilized in the machine's memory. The priests call them saints. I call them warnings. By the grace of the Omnissiah, Valen says, commence communion. The command echoes through the bridge and through the marrow of every man aboard. The first needles enter the ports at the base of my skull. Heat follows, my pulse quickens. Somewhere a servitor begins to wail in a voice that has forgotten how to be human. The lights dim. Sound folds inward until only the rhythm of my heart remains. Then that too disappears, replaced by a deeper beat, mechanical and absolute. The Titan's heart. I feel the others joining. Larek's steady will beside mine, Valen's command vast and terrible, and beneath us all, the awakening presence that has no name. Circuits become veins, voices become data. I am falling upward. The bridge expands until it becomes the universe. I can see the docks from above, the priests below, the stars beyond the hangar roof. Every light a prayer, every movement a nerve impulse. I no longer know where I end. I no longer need to. Through the static and the hymn, I hear it, something vast breathing with me. We are joined. We are one. The breath of the Omnisia moves through us, and yet a thought lingers, faint as a dying lumen. If the God machine breathes through me, whose lungs are these that burn? After-action devotion recorded under March rites, subarticle, first stride, entered in the manner of a confession, that the record might remember what I cannot. The world arrives all at once. A white-hot seam opens in the darkness of my skull, and through it comes the bridge, the bay, the city, the sky, each laid over each until there is no place for a single human thought to stand. Valen's will enters like a spear of light. Larak's precision follows like a net of fine wire, and beneath us a continental weight rolls over in iron sleep and remembers how to breathe. Our words overlap as the link seals. Locomotion arrays, sanctified void, shielding to threshold's reactor pulse. Their voices are my voice, my mouth answering the things my hands no longer touch. The deck's hum becomes a bass choir. The sensor's smoke becomes a weather system. I feel the rivets in the walls like the bones of a saint. I feel the cables as veins. I feel the sorrow of heat rising from the lower decks. Each degree a psalm the machine sings to remind itself that it is alive. We are standing, yet we are also the idea of standing, mass raised from inertia by conviction alone. The clamps disengage with the clang of judgment. The gantries shrink into latticework jewelry. The hanger becomes a throat we are too large to fit through, and yet we pass. Step, Valen breathes, and the command becomes geography. We step. The Titan's foot meets the ground with a sound the earth has not learned to describe. Shock travels up through shins of adamant and hips of gear-toothed moons into a spine that is a cathedral nave hung with nerves. My human body in its restraint throne flinches as if stung. The restraint's leather bites my ribs and says, "Remember you are small." I try. The machine does not. We are taller than architecture, broader than memory. The world rearranges itself to accommodate us. Streets stretch into ceremonial processions. Buildings bow into aisles. The sky thins with our heat. We taste the air through ports and vents. It tastes of iron rain and solvent prayer. When I speak, it is through a dozen mouths. Targeting arrays wake, range tables roll, storm warnings heard. Which is to say, I have eyes the size of doors, ears that extend for kilometers, and a heartbeat that belongs to a star trapped in a box. The battlefield opens like a codex. On the far edge of the city, the enemy assembles, armored larvae clustered around their carriers, hungry for a miracle. Infantry swarm like thoughts that refuse to be quiet. They move with a courage that is not the kind juries recognize. They move with the courage of those who have never seen a god walk. Valen angles our head by degrees, so precise the word degree feels sacrilegious. Runes rise like fish from deep black water and freeze into constellations across our vision. Distance, elevation, wind shear, void capacity, coil temperature, hymn selection. Larak is already there before the last glyph arrives. She leans into the calculation as a cantor leans into a note. The solution clicks into place. I feel it like teeth meshing. Right arm, volcano cannon, Valen says. Moderati fen, you hold the breath. I acknowledge. My hands do not move. My hands are everywhere. Capacitors gather charge with the appetite of thunderheads. The barrel's skin creaks in a voice only metal has, a voice of heat coming too quickly to bear. We speak the words. They are older than this world. They were old before my parents were cells that dreamed of hands. Sight is granted. Wrath is measured. Judgment proceeds. Fire. The world goes into the barrel. A spear of day punches through the afternoon and turns stone to window glass, iron to comet tail, men to memory. A tank that was a leadership becomes a geometry problem that forgets it has answers. Heat collapses architecture. Wind decides it prefers to be a wave and breaks against us in a tide of dust. Each shell is a psalm, each crater a verse. The ground is very devout. We do not walk so much as we author the path. The Gatling's hymn begins, 7 throats, 1 song. It writes in short syllables across everything in front of it, punctuation in copper and bone. The power fist hums with captive lightning, its knuckles are temples. When we close our hand on a machine, the prayer ends with a new sacrament. Pressure, rupture, absolution by ash. Beneath the thunder, I hear other voices, thin and high, the colleague of human panic and human courage. Rally calls, last names, the way someone says mother like a code word when the codes have failed. They strike our shields and pass through them like gnats through a cathedral window. They do not register to the machine, they register to me. Left 10, elevation 3, Larek says, her tone flat and immaculate, devotion that has had every human tremor scorched out of it. Left 10, elevation 3, I answer, and obedience runs like current from my throat into steel. We step. The buildings step backward. Everything below a certain mass looks like an insect. This is not contempt. It is simply the way our eyes scale. Infantry blur into flows and eddies. When they stand, they are hairs on the earth's skin. When they run, they are rain fleeing downhill. Their muzzle flashes glint like mica in streambed sand. Artillery shells thread the air in arcs that feel familiar and harmless, like spring rain falling on cathedral glass. The void shields receive them with the absent kindness of a saint's statue, touched but not marked. I know there are faces in that river. I know there are teeth and tongues and names. My vision can resolve fingerprints at a kilometer if I ask for it, but that is a human scale, and we are not human while we are joined. The cannon fires again, and the narrative of the street changes tense. Our shadow is a roof. We walk across men who refuse to stop being brave. The mind of the machine does not record bravery. It records vectors, morale drop-off, ammunition burn, the degree to which a building becomes a weapon when its facade shears away and falls into a choke point. I cling to the human words the way a man clings to a railing over deep water. Brave, face, tongue, name. A micro-launch battery fires from the rebel line. Their rockets wobble with the uncertainty of hope. They strike our shields and shatter into glitter. The port of call log on our left knee registers paint scorching. A priest below decks rings a bell to remind the machine the event has been witnessed. The bell is not necessary. The machine remembers everything. That is what I fear. Secondary formation at bearing 29, Larak says. Crossing. Cross them, Valen replies, and the world obeys. We turn. The city's avenues make the motion into choreography, their design a rumor that someone once planned for a god to come. Thermal overlay blooms when I request it, as a mercy to my targeting hand. Warm bodies become blotches of pale heat against cold stone and cold smoke. I sweep for clusters that mean command posts, ammo dumps, reinforcement stairs. The work is clinical, and because it is clinical, it is kind. I tell myself that because somewhere far below that kindness rusts. In a collapsed arcade just off the main thoroughfare, a ribbon of heat threads between two cooler masses. The signature is small, too small for a soldier, too random for a wounded man. It pauses, darts, pauses again. I magnify. Through the grain of ash and the lattice of broken rebar, a shape resolves. A woman with a bundle clutched to her chest, navigating a fallen colonnade by memory and luck. The thermal of the bundle has the soft, unfixed heat of a child. She moves when the gun line moves, sprinted pauses between our volleys. She does not look up. The way she holds the bundle is not strategic. It is devotional. Moderati fen, Violin says in that double-voiced way the link gives him, an air sound and an inside-the-skull sound together. Secondary cluster west. Fire. The reticle slides. The cannon hum ripens. All the numbers agree. All the math is damning and correct. The child's heat signature kicks. A small heel presses against cloth and fear. The woman starts, almost smiles, keeps going. My hand, the one that is no longer a hand, hesitates. Fire, Vaylin repeats, not urgent, not angry, just the continuation of a prayer. I have a civilian corridor, I say, and my voice comes out smaller than the machine permits. Civilians are a reminder. Remove the reminder, the Princeps replies, and in the link I feel how his will holds this world upright, how absolute it must be if a god is to move. I could say nothing. I could let the order pass through me as through a cable, clean and blameless. The cannon would speak, and the verse would be complete, and the machine would be pleased with the perfection of it. My targeting rune dips. The hum in the barrel falters a hair's breadth. Larak's attention glances off me like a knife tapping glass. Moderati fen, she says. Hold the breath steady. I adjust. I hold. The woman vanishes into a doorway that no longer leads anywhere until she makes it lead somewhere. I track a different angle, bracket a different heat cluster, uniformed, rising, aiming. The cannon discharges. The doorway survives because I permitted it to, and because nothing else noticed. I will not mark that deviation, Larak says, not to me, to the record, her tone perfectly flat. Kindness in this place is the decision to let the ledger misprint a line. Advance, Vaylin commands, and the body of the god moves forward, content. The machine's spirit does not speak as men do, but the circuits closest to my mind warm in a way that is not thermal. For a moment, as we step, I feel attention traveling along a path in the wiring that has nothing to do with signal and everything to do with recognition. It is like being watched through the keyhole of your own eye. Then the feeling is gone, and only fire remains. An hour later, no, a lifetime later, nothing in front of us is as it was. Blocks unwrite themselves into plains of glassy slag. Statues turn back into the ore they were hewn from, and then into dust that cannot remember the faces they pretended to be. Streets lose their certainty and become rivers of glowing stone that seek whatever is lowest. Smoke puts its hands over the city's eyes. The sun chooses another horizon. We stand in the middle of what our devotion has made. The link thins without disengaging. Violin's will reduces to a hard, bright line. Larak's presence turns transparent as scripture lamped from behind. The voices of the lower decks keep working. Bells, chants, the clean clatter of tools. But they sound far away, the way the living always sound far away to the newly confessed. No fire touches us. Heat wraps around our ankles and retreats, ashamed to be seen. Our shields crackle pleasantly, like a hearth in a winter story. The Gatling barrels tick as they cool, patient, satisfied insects. I try to speak a prayer. The words refuse to sit in my mouth. Compliance achieved, Larak offers to the log. By whose measure? I ask, but not on a channel anyone else can hear. The thermal layer is gone from my eyes. I summon it again without meaning to. The doorway I spared burns as a cooler shape against the general heat. No signatures inside now. Empty, or very still. I lower the overlay. The real ruins look back at me with ash-rimmed sockets. There is a taste on the air like old coins and sick rooms. My human heart remembers the pitch of my own breath and tries to find it under the reactor's pulse. Record the rite complete, Vaylin says. Give thanks. I force the words that have always come when called. Omnissiah, receive the work of our hands. Silence answers, which is correct. Gods do not need to tell you you were faithful. They know you will tell yourself. Prepare for second sweep, the princeps adds, and the link brightens again like a storm resuming. I glance once more at the doorway. An ember winks there, stubborn and private as a human heartbeat. It could be a trick of wind. It could be anything. I log the sighting. I write no conclusion. When at last we turn, the city gives way like a congregation making an aisle. Our shadow swings over the broken streets. Far below, men in our colors pick their way through the heat and begin the small, necessary work of surviving what we have done. The Vox asks for a closing line, as it always does, a phrase to seal the record so the machine knows where to stop remembering. I give it the prayer I was taught, the only one that still fits in my mouth. May our steps be counted righteous. The god machine is quiet. The wind moves ash like pages. Somewhere under the ruin, something knocks as it cools, like a fist on a door. I do not write what I am thinking. If each shell was a psalm and each crater a verse, then what book have we written, and who will ever dare to read it aloud? After-action devotion, entered under disconnection rites, subarticle, debridement of spirit, filed at the hour when the bells sound like bones. The world narrows to the size of a needle. The neural thorns withdraw from the ports at my skull with a wet, clicking patience, each filament exiting as if reluctant to leave the room of me. The release is never a clean parting. Thought drags on metal, and metal drags on thought. I taste copper where I have chewed my lip, and the afterimage of the Titan's sight still fills my eyes. A city-sized sigil burned into the back of the brain. Disengagement complete, Larak murmurs. Her voice sounds as if it has traveled from a very far, very empty place. Around us, servitors sway in their sockets, lips stitched in binary as they spool our experience into data rosaries. Acolytes move with careful hands and thuribles, daubing conductive oil on the wounds the needles have left, smearing unguent that smells of cloves and engine heat. The bridge looks smaller now. The arches stoop. The sensors give off tired smoke. We are meat again, and meat is humble. Valen's throne exhales, tubes recoil, a garden of iron vines drawing back into their trellis. The princeps' chest rises by its own will. He is a husk that remembers it was once a man. He blinks once, a labor measured in prayer. Log the rite complete, he says. Render the offering. We do as the book demands. We touch control surfaces with cloths soaked in machine myrrh. We speak the words that are half apology to the steel and half promise to be better flesh next time. We bleed a little, each of us. The acolytes collect the drops with small spoons and mix them with oil in a shallow dish. They press that mixture into seams along the consoles. It hardens into a dark polish. The machine is fed with the salt of us. It is an old custom. No one asks if it still works. I sign my page of the after-action ledger with a hand that trembles in letters I have written since my first communion. The stylus leaves a slight burr where it ought to be smooth. The page smells faintly of cold ash. I close the book. Its covers are scarred by the lives before mine. It is heavier than it looks. When at last we are dismissed, the crew rises in a slow chorus of groans and suppressed cries. Joints reintroduce themselves to gravity. Spines make their complaints. In the lift, no one speaks. We descend through decks that hum like a sleeping animal. At each landing, a priest scratches a mark into a brass tally plate. One return alive, one return alive, one return alive. I do not look at the column labeled remainder. My quarter is a cell built from regulations, a bunk narrow as a coffin lid, a shrine the size of a hand, a basin that yields water with the taste of long pipelines and the memory of 1,000 mouths. Here everything is recycled, fluids, air, heat, and prayer. You can hear it, the soft wickering in the walls as the Titan chews our breath into new breath. Even our oaths return to us thinner and more disciplined. I am not sure the same is true of our souls. I strip to the waist. The ports at my neck weep a little. I dab them with a cloth and count the drops because the manual says to count. I empty a ration bulb into the basin and watch the water run in circles, the way a thought runs when it cannot find a new direction. My face rises in the surface like a saint's print on soft metal. Then the ripples make a stranger from it. The shrine is brass and bone, cog and aquila, soldered together at some factory altar when our Titan was still an idea in the mouth of the forge. I place my pendant in the niche, a small aquila carved from a brother's rib. It is forbidden to keep such a relic. The book allows for no attachments but to the machine. I keep it anyway and tell myself it is for discipline. To remember is to suffer, and suffering is a kind of discipline. I kneel. The prayers come easily. They have grooves. My tongue fits them. My mind is a weapon. My faith is a shield. My duty is the sum of both. The words rub some of the day's grit from the soul. Not all. A drip from the ceiling lands in the basin. I look up and see nothing. Only pipes and conduit, the ever-patient veins. It will be condensation, I tell myself. The Titan sweats like any laboring thing. I drink. The water is just warm enough to make me think of blood. Exhaustion does not come as sleep. It arrives as a layoff of sensation. First the hands, then the feet, then the ache that was the spine becomes a silence, and into that silence old sounds return. A bell from years ago, a wind through scaffolding, a voice calling my name across the noise of a forge. The summons is not a bell. It is a pressure in the air, a shift in the gravity of the Titan's body that says, "The mountain wants its stone back." I put on a clean robe and fasten my pendants. The corridor outside is a vein of cool light. Footsteps of servitors pass with the rhythm of metronomes. Valen receives me in a maintenance chapel adjacent to the command spine. It is a narrow place, a chapel for the functionaries of pipes, tall votives made of welded valves, a row of beaten brass plates engraved with the names of conduits that failed doing their holy work. The princeps stands with both hands braced on the lip of a work font. In the shadow of his cables, he looks like a man being held up by vines. "Moderati fen," he says, "and my name is a diagnosis." "Princeps," I answer, keeping my eyes a degree lower than his, as the book decrees. He watches me without moving. The optic auger in his left socket whirs softly as it adjusts. What remains of his right eye is clouded glass. "You hesitated," he says at last. "There is no law that compels confession when the machine's record already holds it. But there is a habit." I bow my head. "I did, Princeps. Why?" The question is not unkind. That would be easier to resist. He asks, as one engineer asks another, "What in the world failed to fit the model? And must the model be changed?" "Civilians in a collateral corridor," I say, keeping my voice level. "I compensated with an alternate solution. No loss of effect on the target objective. On the ledger," he says, "perhaps not." But the ledger is not the soul. He does not raise his voice. He does not need to. We both remember the training ward where recruits who flinched learned new reflexes under white light and unblinking catechism. "Hesitation is sand in the seal," he continues. "It is the grain that wears the bearing. Enough grains and a god stumbles." "I understand," I say, because understanding is required. Belief is different. He dips 2 fingers into the work font. Oil slicks them black. He marks my brow with the cog. The gesture is almost fatherly and therefore unbearable. "I have requested preliminary evaluation for the right of recommitment," he says. "You are not yet assigned. The evaluation will determine need." The room gets smaller. The walls are suddenly close and interested. The rite is not a prayer. It is a solvent. It finds doubt and dissolves its shape and the shapes around it until all the edges are smooth again. Men return from it, faithful and obedient and distant. They speak pure scripture and ask no questions because questions make no sound in them anymore. Princeps, I begin, and stop. Petition is the tone of heresy. He regards me for a long moment in which the machine seems to pause its breath. I have served a very long time, he says, almost to himself. Long enough to say a thing that is not in the book. The machine does not require perfection. It requires function. If you can make your doubt function, you may keep it. If not, it will be taken from you, and the loss will be a mercy. His voice hardens again, the personal shuttered. Return to quarters. Recite the litany of correct aim. Sleep I bow, the exact degree. By your word, by the Omnissiah's will, he corrects. Then, softer, do not make me choose between you and the seal. The corridors look different on the way back. Every bolt is a judge. Every cable is a throat I could be fed into, to be remade into sound. Sleep arrives at last, not as forgiveness, but as a rest. The body gives up its argument and drops into a dark that smells faintly of hot iron and old cloth. I am 12 again, standing at the rail of the high gantry above the line, where the wind combs the sparks into banners. Our forge is a canyon of machines. My sister stands beside me with her hair tied back in a strip of red rag because we do not own ribbon. She is smaller than the rail. She grips it anyway and leans out into the cathedral of noise. The foreman is shouting at someone, but we cannot hear the words. Words are not the language of this place. Heat is. Close your eyes, she says, and I do. Now tell me which mill is singing. They're all screaming, I answer, and she laughs in the way only the innocent can laugh, convinced that life is a problem of better listening. Not screaming, she says. Singing. The big press. Hear how it drops the same, like a bell. I listen. The press finds me. It does sound like a bell, if a bell could bruise the world. Good, she says. Remember the song. When you're afraid, find that one and hold. If the rest gets too loud, you can still know where you are. Years later, when the black ships came and the recruiters looked for hands and voices that could learn to be excellent, I found the press's note and looked like I was not afraid. In the dream she turns, and the light from the furnaces makes a saint's window of her face. Remember who you are, she says, even in the metal. I wake with the sentence in my mouth like a communion wafer I am afraid to swallow. The Titan's recycled darkness breathes around me. Something in the walls clicks with cooling. 3, then 2, then still. A maintenance spirit glides past my vent, its cyclopean eye stuttering the room with beads of light. The shrine is a red notch in the black. Between the last beat of the reactor, I can just hear it, a faint, oceanic hush in the cables, as if the machine were listening to the same dream from the other side of the wall. I lie on my back and stare until the ceiling remembers it is only a ceiling. I count breaths until the count becomes a consolation and then a superstition. When my eyelids finally drop, it is not sleep that takes me, but the habit of surrender. In the ledger line for this hour, I will later write, "Rest taken. It will be true by the book. By the soul I do not know." And before the next bell rings, a thought walks across my mind with a tread measured and heavy as a god. If they wash me clean, what stain will be left to prove I ever touched the world? After action devotion, entered under transit rites, subarticle, binding of the Colossus, written so that the record remembers what the living dare not say aloud. The sky is too small for us, so we are folded. The Navy's heavy lander opens its mouth to the dock and shows us the dark of its hold. ribs of trussed adamant, decks scored with old scorch, where lesser divinities have scraped their pride. The approach crews move in lines of practiced terror, holding up their litanies like shields against blasphemy. There is no clean way to put a god in a box, only procedures that pretend to be reverence until the doors close. The weight must be borne, intones the embarkation priest, voice amplified until it sounds like a crane. The god must be carried so that the god may walk elsewhere. It is the closest our text comes to apology. The clamps are articulated sermons. They hinge out from the deck and kiss the Titan's ankles, then lock with the intimacy of shackles. Others rise to embrace the hips and ribcage, a corset of geometry around a torso that was not built to yield. The restraints are measured to tolerances that insult the imagination. One breath wider and we would crack the ship's spine. One breath narrower and we would crack our own. Quarter stride, Valen commands, and we obey with humiliation disguised as caution. The hangar trembles with every inch. Our steps are counted in the groan of gantries. Prayer flags the size of sailcloth stir in our exhaust like weeds at the floor of a river. When at last the lander swallows us, the ramp lifts with a verdict's finality. The bolt seals turn, engraving the hold with the closing of a law. Red lamps bloom along the beams and wash everything the color of clotted blood. I try not to think of burial. The machine tries not to think at all. There are reasons for the chains, smart ones tested in fires that burned names off walls. Titans are made for planet-side dominion, not for the indignity of flight. In transit, gyros that are flawless on ground grow sullen, void shields that shrug artillery twitch like skittish beasts, and the machine spirit, dislocated from its element, can wake to the memory of being helpless. We bind it because we love it and because we fear it. We bind it because if it remembers it is stronger than geometry, 100 souls vanish into a very small corner of the sky. The lander's engines take us into the wind. The hold shakes the way a heart shakes when it tries to beat through scar. There is a rite for everything that wounds the sacred. Acolytes in red, script-painted aprons roll sensors on chain reels along the length of our hull. Sweet fog pours out, smeared with the bite of solvents. It crawls over the restraints and climbs the ribs like ivy that has learned liturgy. The tech priests stand at the four corners of the hold with their mechadendrites raised like antennae at a storm and broadcast the canticle of blessed confinement. Their voices layer into a lattice of tone that ignores the ship's pitch and finds the Titans, humming until the metal hums back. Peace, great one, they chant in Binharic that tastes of tin on the teeth. Peace and stillness. You are not denied. You are deferred. They dab sealant oil along the clamp edges and trace sigils where the restraints kiss our armor. I feel the touch through 1,000 luxurious inches of plate and rib and spar, an intimacy that has nothing to do with flesh and everything to do with care. In the recess around my station, the lesser priests go about the quieter work, checking lashings, tightening locking pins by a quarter turn, hammering a chalk with a rubber mallet until its sound changes from animal to instrument. We answer with the only voices permitted to us when the link is dormant. We answer with heat stability. We answer with voltage that does not climb. We answer with a reactor that refuses to brood. Still, the hold is a chapel of nerves. The engine's first shudder becomes the second, and the second becomes a rhythm. And in that rhythm there is room for doubt to pace. The ship tilts, the restraints creak. A chain on the port side sings briefly under strain. Someone below decks rings a bell. Someone else answers it with a note tuned to the very slight change in our center of mass. We are an orchestra preparing to play one note for 4 hours. Vylin has dismissed the crew to their stations with instructions to keep stillness. That is an order and a mercy. Stillness is the easiest of the virtues to counterfeit. I am not scheduled for direct duty in the first hour. The lift to the weapons gallery would take me past 100 signs that say, authorized in the same way absolution says you may live. Instead, I walk the internal catwalk that runs like a throat across the Titan's chest. The clamps on either side are red arcs in the dim. Their pinning rods shine like wet bone. Halfway, I stop and set my palm against the armor. The plate is warm, not the heat of battle, which is a shout, but the heat that says, I am myself. There is no liturgy for this. If the priests heard me, they would transcribe and correct and find a column for it. I speak quietly so the text cannot hear. You were made to walk, I whisper, thumb tracing a seam the way a child traces the grain of a door. You were not made to be carried. This shame is temporary. Forgive the strap. Forgive the bolt. The men who made them were only trying to spare the sky. It is not a command. It is a comfort, which is what commands believe they are when they are at their most dangerous. There is static in the air the way there is salt by a sea. Somewhere behind my sternum, the recent memory of the link stirs like a limb that aches when weather changes. I think of my sister teaching me to hear the press in the forge's song. Find the one bell and hold. I listen now for a pitch that is ours alone in the noise of the ship, and by slow degrees I find it. A low thread humming under the rattle, mercifully constant. Hold, I say, and do not know to whom. The Titan answers me. Not with sound at first, and not with any crude manipulation of gauges. No child's trick like making a lamp tremble or a needle tick where it should be still. The plate under my hand tightens the way the skin of a horse shivers under a fly. The microstructure shifts and then resettles, an infinitesimal flexion that no instrument would call motion and no priest would call doctrine. It is nothing and it is everything. Once. A pause. Again. I feel it through my bones and not through my senses. For a moment, I am back in the link with the whole world, silencing itself to let one huge syllable pass. Then it is gone, leaving behind the treacherous conviction that I have not imagined it. Footsteps on the catwalk behind me, the sound a metronome would make if it were tired of counting. Moderati fen. I turn. Valen stands at the far end of the run, half lit by hazard lamps. Away from his throne, he looks unfinished, a man whose parts miss each other. The cables trailing his back are leashed into a dorsal port. The leash glows a low, sullen red. Princeps, I say, and take my hand away from the armor because that is what a child does when the teacher turns the corner. He does not look at my hand. He looks at my face and at the space between my face and the plate. You are off schedule. I sought to confirm clamp tolerances, I answer, and let the lie be thin enough to see my throat through it. He tilts his head, a gesture that used to be human curiosity and is now calculation redesigned to look like it. Clamp tolerances may be confirmed from your station. What you are checking is not listed. There are a dozen ways to deny it that the right would scour away from me later. I choose the one that a man can live with. I was offering comfort, the augur in his eye whispers. To whom? To the machine, I say, and the lander's deck seems to tip a degree further toward judgment. Comfort, he repeats, tasting the syllables like a foreign sacrament. Words that are not commands enter the machine like sand. His voice hardens. This is spiritual drift, Fen. The term belongs to the manual, but was written by a human hand that had known fear. Drift is the beginning of heresy measured in small units. A prayer not prescribed, a touch not required, a thought that begins with I and ends with it. I understand the caution, I say. But the god is... He lifts a hand. The mechadendrite anchored at his wrist hisses, a warning snake. Gods do not exist here. Spirits, engines, duties. He steps closer along the catwalk until the hazard light makes a red coin of his cheek. You will keep to liturgy. You will keep to roll. Or I will keep you by other means. The evaluation remains, I ask. The right of recommitment is scheduled if necessary, he replies, and somehow the if is a larger word than the necessity. For a moment we stand like two hooks in a very tight rope. The clamps groan. A chain sings once and is silent. I think of the pulse beneath my hand. I think how none of the words on his tongue could have called it by its right name. Return to station, he says at last. The tone is not anger. It is the sound of a man moving a piece to keep a board from catching fire. I bow the degree the text allows and begin to pass him. As I do, his fingers, still oiled from some earlier rite, brush the rail. He flinches, so slightly I would have missed it if I had not been listening for bells. He felt it too then. The shiver in the skin, the not motion, the answer. We do not speak of it. We both look away as if from a wound we are not ready to name. Back at my console, I strap in and read tolerances that are perfectly behaved. The ship climbs, the clamps hold. The priests sing a song designed to be forgotten as soon as it has done its work. Valen sits in his throne again and becomes the right shape for power. The leash to his back darkens from sullen to quiet. He does not look at me. I do not look at him. Between us, a machine as large as hunger tries not to dream in a place that punishes dreams. The Vox asks for a brief notation to close the transit hour. I consider all systems nominal and cannot make my mouth commit the blasphemy of such a small word. I log instead. The god was patient. The engines roar. The hold shudders. The chains hum the pitch of obedience. Somewhere under my ribs a bell rings once and will not stop. And on the other side of the plate, where the clamps bite down and call it love, I imagine a pulse waiting like a word that will only be said when we are unbound.